Now that you know the basics of curves, let's look and see what some of the tools are and what we can actually do and create with them. So I'm going to start in an orthographic view again, and I'm going to grab my CV curve tool, and I'm just going to throw down some control verts just to make a curve there, hit return to put it into object mode. Now I'm going to duplicate it, and we'll move it up here. And what I'm going to do now is select one, shift select the other one, and we want to put geometry in between the shape of the curve. So we can come into surfaces, and I'm going to go into Loft, option box. Now, the biggest thing here in MCR is we don't want our output geometry to be NURBS. We want them to be polygons, we want quads and control points, and we hit apply, and now you can see that it's put geometry in between the curves. Now it doesn't quite match up, but when we hit 3, notice that it almost matches up exactly as to what we wanted. And now what you can do with these shapes is really up to you. Noodles, bacon, shoelaces, things like that, flags, curtains. So just kind of think of what you can actually create with these curves. Now, you won't use them a ton. The Loft tool is not something that I personally have used a lot. Some of these other ones we'll use a little bit more. The next one, we'll go again, create curve tools, CV curve tool, and I'm going to draw another curve. I'm going to hit return. I'm going to go into create NURBS primitives circle. Okay, so all it is a circle. It's essentially just a curve that is completely round and is closed at the end. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and move it to the beginning of the curve that I drew. And let's make sure that it is facing the direction that we want it to. And we'll scale it down just a little bit. Now to snap it to the curve, I'm going to hold down C, and you can see that the snapping to curve icon there is coming up as well. So we'll just hold down C, and once it kind of takes to the curve, it just kind of runs around it. And I'm just going to rotate it slightly so it's going the same direction as the curve there. And now what we're going to do is we'll come into the perspective so we can see what's happening, and I'll grab my profile curve and I'll shift select my path curve, and we'll go into surfaces, extrude, option box. Now a lot of students get confused and they don't get the result that they want, and generally it's these settings up at the top. The settings that we're going to want are going to be all the ones on the right. So if you can just remember the top ones on the right here, you should be okay, and it will do what you want it to do. Output geometry, polygons, we don't want any NURBS in the class, quads, control points, hit extrude, and you can see that it's drawn geometry, the width of our profile curve along our path curve. Okay, it is black, it's just showing that the normals are reversed, so we can just reverse the normals real quick, and if we hit 3, now it's really looking a lot more like the curve. So we still have some ability to change it based on the profile curve. Okay, the geometry that is created from the curves still has history attached to it. So we can change things as long as we don't delete the history. So we can change things like the scale if we need it to be thicker or thinner. Okay, you can also get into the component level of the curve, and I can grab some control verts. Control verts turned on, and now we can just scale them in to change the shape. Make it square, whatever we want to do with the shape. We have a lot of control still. That history is still attached. Okay, you can also come in here now when you select the geometry and go into the extrude here. We can change the scale and we can get some tapering. Okay, depending on what you wanted to do with it. And we can also do some rotation in here. Now if you try to get it to rotate, it's going to only do 360 degrees, but if you wanted to rotate it more, you can actually put in a value and have it rotate even further. Okay, so that's some of the options in the extrude tool, and this one is a little bit more common. You'll use this one a little bit more often. Now the other one that we have, let's go back into an orthographic view, and I want to find my origin here. It's important that we know where the origin is for this one. Create CV curve tool, and what I'm going to do is put my first point on the grid. I'm going to shift so the other points are staying perpendicular to the first one. And now I'm going to create, imagine the silhouette of a vase or a chalice or a wine glass, something along those lines. Okay. Now we also want to imagine that we can see inside of it, and we want to give it thickness. You don't want anything to ever not have thickness. Okay, so I'm going to grab just this last control vert, and I want to make sure that it's assigned right on the grid right there. Okay, and then you can fix the shape and edit the shape however you want. You can do it before or after we put down the geometry. It's really up to you. Once we have the shape that we like, we'll just go into object mode, and we're going to go surfaces, revolve, option box. Okay, so similar from what we've done before. Segments, generally we're going to ask you to use 8 just because you can get a very nice round form with 8. There may be times that you need to go up and make 16. So it just depends on what you're actually trying to build. So we'll stick with 8. Output geometry, we want polygons, and again we want quads and control points. We hit revolve, and now we have an object based on the curves. Let's go ahead and reverse the normals, and you can see that we have a nice vase. Think of pinnacles on tops of buildings and details and all kinds of things that you can create with Revolve, and you can get very complex shape very easily. And what's nice about it, when we're talking about holding edges and insert edge loop tool, they very easily go in there and you can adjust things to get the look that you really want. So you can always come back in at the end and add some holding edges just to sharpen up some of the areas. Okay, now we're not quite done yet. There is one other thing that we want to do besides delete history, and that has to do with where the curve that we created for the silhouette of the vase began and ended. Okay, and what Maya does, let's go into 4 view and we'll go back into 1, and you can see it here. If I go into vertex and select the bottom one, you can see that it's created 8 verts. So there's 8 verts on top of each other, and we don't want to have that. We want it to be a nice seamless bottom. So I'm just going to go ahead and merge them down into 1, and we'll do that with the bottom, or where the curve started, and then we'll also do it where it ended. And once we're happy with our shape, we can go ahead and delete the history, rename it to whatever you want, and you are finished with that object. So those are the curve tools that we want you guys to become familiar with. So go ahead and practice and apply them to your scene.